Well, welcome back to Open Exchange and back in Johannesburg. Now, Labour economist Loane Sharp has said that South Africans' further education and training colleges are in a shambles. Government is wrong to put its money into developing them. That's one of many issues related to Labour, and it's becoming a bit of a theme this week. He joins us now, Loane Sharp, to explain his reasoning and to talk about things linked to Labour. Morning to you, Loane. Yesterday we talked about Sasol and Harmony and Telkom cutting jobs. We talked about the minimum wage, possible exploration by the ANC and 6 million job creation, mutually contradictory. But it seems to be, it may be the theme of the year, is how we're going to do this. What are your latest numbers, the Adcorp index, telling us about employment?
Well, in November and December, employment ticked up by about 24,000 jobs, but the overwhelming majority of those jobs were in the informal sector. The formal sector continues to struggle. For the year as a whole, 2013, permanent and temporary jobs declined by over 240,000 for the year. The indications are that we're going to see similar difficulties in 2014. Many of the issues in the labour market, the emergence of rival trade unions, strike-related violence and intimidation, a potential breakup of COSATU, none of these things were resolved in 2013 and they're going to play out this year. So we're looking at increased strike activity, increased production disruptions, so on. I think 2014 is going to be a more difficult year than last year. Certainly the economy needs to grow at least 4% per annum just to absorb the school leavers leaving the secondary education system each year. So we're not looking at anything like that economic growth.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's not going to happen. So, government, I don't know, you could call it a target of 6 million jobs or you could call it a wish. I think it's really just a wish. Because there's no concrete action around the labour market. The issues in the labour market relate to regulation, and there's almost no chance of deregulation.
And of course, Loane, you've come out quite strongly and said that FETs and continued investment into FETs is just not the way to go. How then do you think that the government should be taking on this wish list or target that they've set themselves of 6 million?
Well, firstly, we have a very attractive university system. Universities are public entities, but they are much more functional than the FET colleges. The universities do have problems. They're directing more and more students to the arts and humanities and social sciences, which are not as relevant in the workplace. And the universities, in a cartel-like arrangement with the professional bodies, are not producing sufficient engineers, doctors, lawyers, accountants, and so on. The growth rate of professionals leaving university is just between 0.1% and 2%. So I think the university system is a much more beneficial platform to divert government resources to than the FET colleges. The FET colleges do not improve their graduates' chances of finding a job. You've got no better chance of finding a job graduating from an FET college than simply with a matric.
That says something for the quality, doesn't it, of the, because it's supposed to be technical advance. But let's look again at, and it's the same old story, this the ANC talking about job creation. And yesterday we had Leon Lowe, and he was saying it's not job creation, it's job redistribution. If the state creates a job. So you've got that on the one hand. On the other hand, it's no use saying you're going to produce jobs, create jobs, if you don't create the conditions in which people will create jobs.
And I think government is unnecessarily afraid of the idea of labour market deregulation, which is really the true source of job creation for South Africa. But there are really two laws, labour laws, that are problematic. The first one relates to dismissal protections. It's very hard to dismiss a poor performing worker because of the threat of CCMA action. The CCMA is hostile towards small businesses. Last year they initiated nearly 180,000 small businesses. So about 10% of all small businesses are tied up in CCMA actions on a consistent basis. So we've got to eliminate dismissal protections, but we've also got to revise our collective bargaining system, which drives wages way above labour productivity. poverty. So those are the two things that need to be handled, and they're not as politically explosive as they seem. But that would go a lot further in creating jobs in South Africa than these wishes that we see. I mean, the 5 million jobs promise of 2009 is now long forgotten.
Let's quickly look at another trend that seems to be unfolding in South Africa, and that's the reversal of the brain drain. It seems as if we're now going to have more people scrambling for the same pie. For me, it sounds as if this situation is actually going to get worse.
No, it won't. The general unemployment rate for the population as a whole is 37%. The unemployment rate for high-skilled professionals is just 0.4%. So our high-skilled labour market is very scarce in skills. There are, for example, at the moment, about 830,000 unfilled vacancies in the private sector alone.
Just looking, Loane, at, we had the graph there of the wages, looking at it there for the high-skilled workers. What is that kind of graph telling us?
Well, it tells us that there's a shortage of high-skilled workers. The wages have been rising consistently since 1997 in real terms. High-skilled workers' wages have been rising after inflation by between 5 and 10% per annum. So South Africa is desperately short of skills, and the returning South Africans are coming into that environment where there's this desperate shortage of skills. So South Africans, strangely, who emigrated and thought that their prospects were better in the US or the UK, have actually found those labour markets to be weak and the South African labour market for high-skilled professionals to be very strong.
Final question for you, Loane. This, the youth wage subsidy, it's been 4 or 5 years in the political process to come through. It does seem like a concrete reward for an employer to employ a young person. They get a certain amount back on tax. Is this going to make a difference because it's now operational?
The Treasury, which initially put forward this idea, estimates that only 127,000 jobs will be created from the initiative. There are budget constraints, so only a certain amount of money has been set aside for the youth tax incentive. I don't think it's going to have a major impact. It might illustrate to us that employment is sensitive to wages, which the ruling party and COSATU have long dismissed. So maybe that will be an unanticipated advantage of the youth tax incentive.
Kind of a foot in the door.
I don't think it's going to have a significant impact on employment.
Thank you so much, Loane, for unpacking those numbers. Of course, that was Adcorp Labour economist Loane Sharp.